Okay, have you ever, like, met someone and you're just drawn to them? Like, they're so captivating that you can't help but wonder, are they, like, the real deal or just really good at being, I don't know, convincing? That's
Mm.
what we're looking into today, I guess, on Grifter or Gifted. We kind of go deep into these figures, these people who, everyone's got an opinion about, and we just try to answer the question, are they really making a difference? Or are they just, kind of full of it?
It's a question we all ask ourselves, I think, especially these days when it seems like, I don't know, charisma and controversy just go together.
Yeah, for sure. And today we're talking about someone who I think really embodies that kind of push and pull. Ezra Miller. I mean, think about it from, we need to talk about Kevin, which was like, it's such a powerful film, to Fantastic Beasts, and then, of course, The Flash. It's like their career's been this mix of like critical acclaim and then all these controversies. So are they a visionary pushing boundaries, or are they just like manipulating everyone and causing chaos?
Well, the interesting thing is, Miller's career started with so much promise. Like early on, everyone was praising their talent.
Yeah.
They were just so captivating on
And
screen.
they won that award, right?
Yeah, the Breakthrough Performer Award at the Hamptons International Film Festival for Another Happy Day.
Exactly. And they were so open, too, about their struggles, like overcoming a speech impediment, coming out as queer. It seemed like they were really trying to use their platform to kind of like challenge norms and be authentic.
Yeah, and I think that's what resonated with people. It made them seem relatable, even inspirational in a way. But even then, there were these hints of, a rebellious side, like dropping out of high school, getting involved in Occupy Wall Street. It was clear they weren't afraid to, question authority and challenge the status quo.
And then there's that quote from like 2012, like you can do anything you want if you can survive. I remember reading that and thinking, whoa, that's pretty intense. Even a little, I don't know, unsettling.
Yeah, it's a statement that you can interpret in so many ways. On the one hand, it's like this bold declaration of self-belief,
Yeah.
like refusing to be held back by expectations. But then on the other hand, it's almost like, I don't know, a disregard for consequences,
Yeah, that makes
a
sense.
sense of being untouchable, which, well, as we know, can lead to trouble.
And it did, right. Like, things definitely took a turn. I mean, there was that drug possession charge back in 2011 while filming The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Right.
On the surface, it seems like, okay, whatever, marijuana. They even kind of brushed it off, calling it like a harmless herb or whatever.
Yeah, but if you look at it in the context of everything else, it starts to feel like, I don't know, a pattern, like this disregard for rules, for
Right.
norms. And remember, this is all happening as their career is taking off.
Right, right.
It makes you wonder, were they starting to buy into their own hype? Like, did they start to believe they were above the rules?
That's a good
It's
point.
a slippery slope.
It is. And, well, things definitely escalated. I mean,
Sure.
in 2020, there was that video that surfaced. It seemed to show Miller choking a woman in Iceland.
Yeah,
Now, they denied it, but the video was disturbing.
for sure. And I think that incident was a real turning point in how the public saw them. It wasn't just, youthful mistakes anymore. This was a serious allegation of violence.
Yeah.
It made people question whether the charming persona they presented was all just an
It's
act,
like, was it a facade?
right?
And then it seemed like everything just, I don't know, blew up after that.
It's like it opened the floodgates,
Exactly. 2022.
right?
Multiple arrests in Hawaii, disorderly conduct, harassment, even assault charges. Then there were the allegations about their farm in Vermont,
Yeah.
housing a mother and 3 kids in an unsafe environment, guns, marijuana.
It was a lot.
Yeah, it really was. And it wasn't just isolated incidents anymore. It started, I feel like, well, like a pattern of behavior. People were worried.
There were real concerns about their judgment, their impulsivity, their potential to hurt others. It was a stark contrast to the image they built early on, the one of the vulnerable artist speaking their truth.
Yeah.
It was like that vulnerability had been replaced by something much more volatile, unpredictable, and everyone was asking what happened. Was it fame gone wrong? Or was this darker side always there, just hidden?
Mhm.
And then, of course, there's the whole Tokata Iron Eyes situation, which just complicates everything.
Yeah, that's a whole other layer to this story. It brings up all these questions about power, manipulation, and, well, potential abuse.
So Tokata Iron Eyes, she's an indigenous activist, and she first met Ezra Miller when she was like 12,
Mm.
just a kid. Years later, her parents come out and accuse Miller of grooming her, manipulating her. They painted a really troubling picture of their relationship.
Yeah, it was intense. And they went as far as filing a restraining order, right?
Yeah.
Harassment prevention order.
Exactly. And a judge actually granted it based on the evidence presented. This wasn't just gossip, you know? There were serious concerns for Tokata's safety.
Right. And it's important to remember the power dynamic here. I mean, you've got a huge Hollywood star, tons of influence, versus a teenager.
Absolutely. That alone raises red flags, regardless of what their relationship was actually like.
But then Tokata comes forward, and she denies it all. Says Miller was just a supportive friend during a tough time, even accuses her parents of manipulating her.
Right, and that's where the whole visionary or con artist question becomes even trickier. Because if you believe Tokata, Miller's this supportive, caring person. But if you side with her parents, Miller's a master manipulator preying on a vulnerable young person.
It's a total he said, she said situation. And it's even more complicated because of the age difference and all the other stuff going on with Miller at the time.
Definitely. And it forces you to ask, who do you believe? What evidence do you trust?
Exactly. And it's important to remember, even if you believe Tokata, Miller was still an adult in a position of power while she was a minor.
Right. That raises ethical questions no matter what, even if there was no abuse or coercion.
And then you add in that whole statement from Miller about the polyamorous squad. What does that even mean in this context?
I know, right? Is it just them being honest about their values, or is it another way to deflect from the accusations, create confusion?
It's like they're playing a character in real life. The lines between performance and reality get so blurry.
Totally. It makes it almost impossible to separate the art from the artist. Can you appreciate the talent when the off-screen behavior is so disturbing?
And that leads us to The Flash, which came out in June 2023.
Yeah. A movie that, despite some great reviews for Miller's performance, was completely overshadowed by the controversy.
Oh, for sure. Miller even showed up at the premiere. It seemed like they were trying to address everything.
Right. They talked about their struggles, thanked the Warner Bros. CEO and others for their support.
But they didn't really take full responsibility, did they?
Not really. It felt very carefully orchestrated, like damage control.
And the film itself didn't do that well, did it?
Not as well as expected. And some people think the controversies definitely played a role in that.
Which brings up an interesting question. Are audiences getting tired of this?
Tired of what?
Like, tired of superhero movies? Or tired of giving celebrities a pass for bad behavior?
Oh, interesting.
Or are we finally at a point where we can't just ignore the bad stuff, even if the movie's good?
I think it's bigger than just superhero movies. We're seeing it everywhere. People are demanding accountability.
Yeah. So, where does that leave Ezra Miller? What happens next?
Well, nobody knows for sure. Their future in the DC universe is up in the air. No word on recasting or anything.
And there's that whole thing with Jonathan Majors, too, right? Similar situation, facing legal troubles, uncertainty about his role in the Marvel movies.
Yeah, it's a big moment for Hollywood. How do they handle these situations when talent and, well, really bad behavior come together?
It feels like these cases will set the standard for how the industry deals with this kind of thing going forward.
It's fascinating and uncomfortable. It makes us all think about our own values. What do we expect from the people who entertain us?
Okay, so after looking at all of this, all the highs and lows, the career, the personal life, can we answer the question? Is Ezra Miller a visionary or a con artist?
You know, it's really hard to say. The evidence is all over the place. You see genuine artistry, moments of vulnerability, but then you also see reckless and potentially harmful actions.
It's almost like we're looking at two different people.
Right. It reminds you that people are complex. You can't just put them in a box, good or bad.
I went into this thinking of Miller as this, I don't know, mysterious figure, but now I'm not so sure.
I get it. It's disappointing when someone you admire turns out to be, well, not who you thought they were.
We have to remember, though, we only see what they want us to see. It's all carefully crafted.
Exactly. But we also can't ignore when someone consistently hurts others.
Right. So is Ezra Miller both a visionary and a con artist?
Maybe they are. Maybe that's the most unsettling part.
Because it means we have to think critically.
Yeah.
We can't simplify things. There's always more to the story. It really makes you think, like how much does someone's personal life, their actions, how much should that weigh on how we see their work? Can you really separate the art from the artist? Especially when, they've done some pretty messed up stuff.
It's the age-old question, isn't it? And there's no simple answer. But I think now, especially with social media, with everyone being so much more aware of social justice issues, it's not something we can just brush aside anymore.
Right. Like we're all having to reevaluate our own values. Do we put the art first, the entertainment, even if it means kind of overlooking some really bad behavior? Or do we hold the artist accountable, even if it means, I don't know, missing out on something potentially amazing?
And this isn't just about Ezra Miller, is it? We're seeing this conversation happening everywhere with so many high-profile figures, especially since the hashtag #MeToo movement. It's like we're all taking a closer look at celebrity, at the power they have, and saying, okay, we need more transparency, more accountability.
It's a real cultural shift, and it's happening right now. I'll be honest, I started this whole deep dive with this image of Ezra Miller as this, I don't know, kind of tragic figure. But now, I'm not so sure. I feel conflicted, a little disappointed even.
Yeah, I think that's a natural reaction. It's like we're grieving for someone we admire, someone we thought we knew. But we have to remember what we see of these public figures, it's often just an image, a carefully constructed narrative. The reality is often much more complicated, messier.
It's a good reminder that people are complicated. We
Mhm.
can't just write someone off based on one thing, good or bad, but we also can't ignore a pattern of behavior that's harmful, that hurts other people.
Exactly. And I think the Ezra Miller case really highlights that tension, that struggle between wanting to believe in the good in people and the need to hold them responsible for their actions.
We started this episode trying to figure out if Ezra Miller was a visionary or a con artist. But maybe the real question is, can they be both?
That's the heart of it, isn't it? Can someone be both brilliant and deeply flawed? Can they create art that's inspiring, that lifts us up, while at the same time doing things that hurt and disrespect others?
And I think the answer is yeah. Unfortunately, yes. Human nature is messy. People are capable of amazing things and terrible things. And sometimes those conflicting impulses exist in the same person.
It's a tough truth to swallow, but it's a truth we need to acknowledge if we want to, really engage with the world, with each other, in a meaningful way. It's about recognizing that there's nuance, that things are complex, that there aren't always easy answers when it comes to human behavior.
So where do we go from here? What does redemption look like for someone like Ezra Miller? And is it even possible, given how the public sees them?
That's hard to say. It really depends on each person, how they choose to engage with Miller's work, knowing what we know about their personal life. There's no right or wrong answer, but I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about, to consider.
Definitely. And it's not about judging anyone or condemning them. It's about trying to understand human nature, the challenges we face in a world where charisma and controversy often seem to go hand in hand.
And that brings us back to the core of our show, right?
Mm.
Grifter or gifted. In Ezra Miller's case, it's not as simple either. Maybe they're both. And maybe that's the most unsettling truth of all.
Because it forces us to think for ourselves, to look at the nuances, to resist the easy answers. It reminds us there's always more to the story than we see at first glance.
And that's exactly why we keep diving deep.
And on that note, I think we'll wrap things up for today. This has been a really thought-provoking deep dive. Thanks to everyone for listening.
Thanks for having me. It's been great. And who knows, maybe in a few years, we'll be back revisiting this very question with a whole new set of information about Ezra Miller. The story's not over yet.
Yeah, good point. This is definitely a developing situation. And you know what? That's what makes it so fascinating. The conversation continues, and we'll be here to dive deep into whatever comes next. Until then, take care, everyone.